Good evening. My name is Jeff Masagatani. I'm a ministerial intern with Center for Spiritual Living, Greater Las Vegas, and it's my pleasure to be with you here at Seaside this evening. With all of you, all of my people, all of my wonderful fellow journeyers as we are going on this journey. And I know it's been a long night, and I know it's been a long evening, so my first question to you is, are you breathing? Right? The ritual of Centers for Spiritual Living, the breath. Right? So what I'd like for you to do is actually go ahead and breathe with me, but I'd like for you to breathe with me in a very specific way. The specific way I'd like to do with you is I would like for you to pant through your nose. Okay? I know it sounds kind of funny, but it's panting through your nose. So all together. And again, pant. And one more time, panting through your nose. Just make sure you don't blow any boogers, right? Okay. So what this is in yoga, this is called the breath of fire. And what the breath of fire does is it energizes and innervates us. It brings more vitality and more energy into our bodies. And it's a little trick that we can do at any time when we're feeling a little slouch. So, it being 9 o'clock at night, we might be feeling a little bit of a slouch, so I wanted to share that with you. And the question that I started off with, are you breathing, is the question of the evening. And it is also the title of my talk. So, a couple of weeks ago, I had the wonderful opportunity to sit in and substitute a class on the Meditation is More Than You Think class. And the particular week that I got to substitute was the breathing meditations. So if you're familiar with this at all, it's a wonderful survey class that goes through all kinds of different meditations, and this particular one was on breathing. So I got to do lots of research on breathing, and the breath of fire came up, and other techniques came up that I'll share with you a little bit later. And it was so fascinating and so wonderful to go into this class, because what I find when we teach classes here, and all of you teachers know this, and those of you who are teaching Science of Mind classes, and all of us are teachers because we're all standing here on this stage and on the stages and platforms of our centers. And each time is an opportunity to teach, but each time is also an opportunity for us to go deeper with the subject material, to look at it from a different perspective, to see something new, and to really embody it in a whole new and different way. And so I got to do that a couple weeks ago with breathing. So I'd like to share with you tonight some of the things that I learned about breathing through the class from the other night. And so when you open the textbook, not the textbook, but when you open the manual, if you will, for the Meditation is More Than You Think, I believe this is what it says in all of them, but I'm not sure because we have a tendency to add materials at Centers for Spiritual Living, Greater Las Vegas. So this may be in everybody's or it just may be in ours, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. So it is a quote from The Mysticism of Sound and Music by Hazrat Inayat Khan. It's not, okay, so it's in everybody's then. All right, so this is good. All right, if a person wishes to study self, to know the self, what is important is not to study the mind or of the thought or of the imagination or of the body, but the study of the breath. The breath has made the mind and body for its expression. It has made all from the vibration of the physical atom, from the tiniest to the grossest. Breath is audible. It is a word in itself. For what we call a word is only a more pronounced utterance of breath fashioned by mouth and tongue. If we said, first was the breath, it would be the same thing as saying, in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And all that was created by God, and that which was not created was never created by God. Wow. Simple contemplation of breath. Breath being the beginning of life. And so we got to really, a wonderful opportunity to really study breath that night. And so we first looked at it as unconscious breathing. We're all going about our business all day long, breathing in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, not giving much thought to it. And how often do we do that about God? How often do we bring our conscious awareness to God? Now, I know that most of us in this room, we do it at least a few times a day, but we could do it more often. And it's that in and out, in and out, in and out, and it's an autonomic nervous system function, which is good, because we don't want to have to be considering like, okay, I need to breathe and out all day long. We'd never get anything done if we were only focusing on being able to breathe or, making our hearts beat. Okay, I got to make it beat, 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 beat. Right? So it's a wonderful function that it's autonomic, that it's automatic. And that's great. And it's interesting that often we only become aware of our breath when we're losing it. We've lost our breath. We are winded, or we're struggling, or we're feeling constricted, and we notice our breath because our breath changes. The way we're breathing changes, and that causes us to have an awareness of our breath. So if we're moving about life and noticing that that's also the way life is happening, that we're only noticing life and we're only noticing our participation in it, or we're only noticing it when something is happening to us, we're living pretty unconsciously. We're living in that victim conscious. We're living in that to me stage that we've heard about tonight and that we've all studied at some point. Right? Another time when we come to being aware of the breath that we don't always think about is like when we've exerted ourselves, when we've efforted. When we've had a strenuous physical exercise and we've gone for a jog, or we've been on the treadmill, and obviously I haven't felt that breath in a while. Probably about a year now since I was last at the gym. But when there's exertion or effort that goes into it, we also begin to notice the breath. And we notice when we're struggling or when things become difficult and it's, and there's the sigh of disappointment or discontent. So those are all ways that we are living our lives unconsciously. Not only our breathing is unconscious, but our life is unconscious. And it can happen at any point during the day. We move on at any point, any time during the day, any time during our lives. And then when we shift into becoming more aware of our consciousness, becoming more aware of our breath, rather, consciously aware of our breath, we learn, oh, wait, I can control my breath. I can control the way I breathe. I can use my breath to affect change. I can use my breath to direct the flow of it. I can use my breath like we just did at the beginning of this talk to make myself feel more energized by breathing shallow and fast. Or I can calm myself by allowing myself to breathe deeper, taking in that nice deep breath that we all know and love so well, that we just do it so automatically when we just say, okay, everybody take a deep breath, and everybody goes, but we can use it to relax. They're techniques, they're tools. We can count our breaths to enter into a meditation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Counting to see, counting just to still the mind by focusing on the breath. We can use it as a technique or a tool, just like we can use spiritual mind treatment as a technique or a tool. We can use meditation as a technique or a tool. But it's a technique, and it's a tool. And we're using it consciously, mentally, to change something. To change the condition to change the experience, to change the form. And this is sowing to the flesh. This is mental science, not spiritual science. Not the spirit, not the science of spirit. Not the science of the mystic. It is the science of the spirit, if you will, because the entire universe is the body of the spirit. The entire universe is spirit made manifest. And in that sense, it is spiritual. But it's still mental. Ernest Holmes, the famous quote that we hear so often, "There's good for the universe and I can use it." You know what? That's right. It's totally true. It's absolutely right. But it's limiting. It's limiting. God is so much more than the universe. And the universe is physical matter. The universe is the physical presence. So we're talking here now about mental realm, physical realm, which is spiritual. But spirit is so much more. And so the third breath, one of the other breathing techniques rather, that I shared with the class that night was a way of just following your breath and just noticing your breathing. You don't have to do anything for it. You don't try to change it. You just follow it. Just become aware of it. Become aware of how you're breathing right now in this moment. Don't try and change it. Just be aware. And what we notice is that there's a flow, a natural rhythm that occurs as we're breathing. And what we realize is that we're not breathing. We're being breathed. We're being breathed. There is something within us that knows. That is the divine impulsion and compulsion for life. And how do we know this? Think about your breath. Concentrate on your breath for another moment. Follow your breath. And notice the stopping point at the bottom of your breath. As you inhale, there's that sweet spot before the exhale begins. And as you've exhaled, there's another sweet spot before the next inhalation starts. It's a stillness. It's a quietness. It's the place of pure potentiality, pure possibility. It's the place where God dwells. And it breathes. It breathes. I can try to control my breath. I can try and hold my breath like I did when I was a kid and we would swim at my grandparents' apartment complex. There was a wonderful swimming pool and we would go back and forth and I would try and swim underwater and see if I could go all the way to that side and all the way back holding one breath, doing it in one breath. And by the end of summer, I could always at least do one, sometimes 1.5, sometimes even 2. It was always a fun trick to see. But there was always that within me that made me take the next breath. I could hold it, I could hold it, I could hold it, I could hold it. But I had to take the next breath. I couldn't control that. And that's God, compelling and moving me forward, breathing me. And so when I get into that sweet spot, when I realize that I'm not breathing, but it is God breathing me, I realize that I'm the place where God shows up. I realize that I'm the place where God shows up, lives, moves, breathes, and has its being in, through, and as me. And I have my life in it, living in its expression, as its expression. And so I just concentrate on my breath. And I bring myself back to that place of just following and realizing that it is ever present. Realizing that it is right there. As Joel Goldsmith would say, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. And it breathes me. And in that, I'm sustained and maintained. And that is sufficient. And when I realize this, I'm in alignment. I've entered into that conscious union. And I live in grace. And that is the true nature. So it's not about better humanhood. It's about being in the state of grace. Living there. So there's a power for good in the universe, and I can use it. That's absolutely true. But what's more true is there's a power for good in the universe, and it uses me. It uses me. God is. I don't need to tell it what to do. God is. It simply is. And so what I know for myself, and I know for others in the room, we're called to share this. We're called to be here, to speak, to hold the beacon, as Colleen mentioned earlier, to be the light, to be the presence, to show what's possible. And what's possible is much bigger, much greater than my Toyota Prius, or my house, or my relationship with my beloved. So tonight I ask, are you breathing? Or are you breathed? There's no right or wrong, but what there is more. Namaste.